Hello, hello, hello. Today I am introducing you to my newest book. It's called Pivot. Is it time for a change? And today I wanted to go through this with you just so that you have a good idea about some mindset that you have to think about when you are going through a change. And so the introduction. Throughout your life, you will encounter many phases, many people, many jobs, and many changes. Those changes either come from within or when someone else makes a decision that causes us to make a decision about how we will or will not adjust. More often than not, in those situations, we often feel we don't have a choice. You get a job offer from a company in a new city, so you got to move. Your child is struggling in school, so you need to spend more time to work with them on their studies. You come to terms with the problems in your marriage, and you have no choice but to put an end to it. In each of these situations, you may feel like you have little or no choice. But as we will discover, we do make the decision to pivot. Either we take the job or we decide we don't want to uproot the family. So we keep up the job hunt. You're here because you're ready for a change, but you're not quite sure how to commit to a new life. Pivot shouldn't be a scary word, and change shouldn't be a foreign concept. Why? Because it is our nature to change regularly. We just don't realize it. So, if you're contemplating a significant change in your life or you just made one, you're in the right place. We all have varying levels of comfort with change, and most of us are pretty reluctant to embrace it. Does that sound like you? If so, it's totally understandable. Change isn't something that can be taught, it's person dependent, and pivoting your life really is just a byproduct of all the events and things leading up to that point. But it's easier said than done, and it's fair that you may be cringing at the thought of changing up your current lifestyle. In this ebook, we'll open your eyes to the concept of change. We won't change your mind or teach you. We'll simply give you a different perspective. We'll tell you why it's hard and why people struggle with it. And we'll counter that with a multitude of benefits that come along with a life pivot. Then we'll get to the good stuff, including when you should make a change and how to make a change. So buckle up, get ready for a new perspective. Changing times are upon us. Change. What is change? It's a 6-letter word, both a noun and a verb, and an idea that either scares the heck out of you or thrills you to death. Isn't that a weird saying? Whether you strive in new situations or you try to avoid them at all costs, you must try to get comfortable with the concept of change because it's not going to go away anytime soon. Better yet, you should get to a point where you understand how to change your life gracefully and strategically. By definition, change means the act or instance of making or becoming different. If you're thinking, that seems pretty hard to define, you're right. By its very nature, change is hard to characterize because change is always changing. That's mind-blowing, right? This is exactly why so many people fear change. It's the unknown. Then most humans aren't comfortable with the unknown. In the context of your life, change is broken down into different stages. It isn't instantaneous, nor is it experienced the same way for every person. So, to understand what it means to you, let's look at the 5 stages of experiencing change. Number 1 is pre-contemplation. In the first stage of changing or pivoting your life, you're in denial. You don't think you need to make a change, or you're really not prepared to make one just yet. Contemplation. This stage is when you decide something needs to change. You may not necessarily be ready for the change, but you know something needs to be different. More times than not, the contemplation stage is when you realize you will need to take on this challenge on your own. 3 is preparation. At this point, you've not only acknowledged that you want to make a change, but you've also decided that you will. You may not have a game plan for how you'll make these changes, but you are committed to the pivot. Number 4, action. This is the exciting stage where you're starting to put things into high gear. You're making changes and taking action to ensure that your life is pivoting. Now you're on the path to success. We get to maintenance. This stage is often underappreciated, but it is critical to the success of your new lifestyle. In order to keep things afloat, you need to keep up with the changes you've implemented in your life. You may experience some setbacks, and that's okay. The important thing is that you keep tracking with your goals and the changes you've implemented in your life. If you're feeling overwhelmed by looking at these stages, don't worry. Everything has a process in life, and change is no different. Making a pivot in your life doesn't mean you need to follow a strict process. The stages are simply listed so that you can understand that you shouldn't expect a significant life pivot to happen right away. You'll be able to relate to these steps and better understand what your mind is going through as you pivot your life. So why do we struggle with it? Think about the quote, "Change is the only constant." It's like an oxymoron, right? After all, if change is the only constant, doesn't that mean that nothing is consistent? If you're thinking this way, you're on the right track. Change is omnipresent. Everything and everyone is always changing. We can't keep track of changes, which makes us nervous because it means we're constantly operating within the unknown. We'll let you in on a secret, and you probably already know it. Humans don't like the unknown. In addition to that, here are a few other reasons why we struggle with change. Number 1, it's risky. Let's face it, when we change something up, we don't know what to expect. The outcome could either be better than our starting point or worse. That's a big risk. Think about people who change their hairstyle all the time. They're taking a risk that they may not love their new do. But on the flip side, there's a good chance that they'll find the perfect look by testing out something different. The risk element can be scary, but we shouldn't view it as an obstacle, just something that we can work on. Number 2, we lack purpose. It's the one thing to make a change. It's another to have a purposeful quest towards a life pivot. If you set out to make a change, that's exactly what you'll do. But there's no guarantee you'll maintain or enjoy it. On the other hand, if you start with a why, your change will have a purpose and a strategy, which in the long run leads to adherence and commitment. Number 3, changes are unrealistic. A classic example is New Year's resolutions. The first week of January, the gyms are crowded. People are significantly more friendly, and everyone is on their A game at work. But after a few short weeks, everything goes right back to normal. In this case, and many others, people have a hard time implementing changes because they're set up unrealistic expectations for themselves. If you want your life to change, you need to keep them realistic, measurable, and purposeful. Humans like stability. In fact, we crave it. The reason we struggle with change is that it's a neurological imperative to be kept safe. Our primal brain is wired to crave safety and security to help us survive. When we start to step out of our comfort zone, we hear a little voice in our head telling us it's too risky. We can't do it. What if we fail? So as you begin to make the changes, even the small ones, expect and accept that there will be self-doubt and fear coming up. It's just your brain trying to keep you safe. No matter how open to risk you are or how much you crave spontaneity, you, like everyone else, feels most comfortable with stability. Before you start to try to prove that you're not in favor of a stable life, let's look at a few examples that show just how extreme this principle goes. In other words, it encompasses everyone and every situation. Example 1. Sandra is a freelance graphic designer. She loves what she does and grew up under the notion that passion was more important than pay. Things change when she begins to really struggle with money. She has to pick up a second job, rarely sees her family, and is always stressed out. The change? Sandra would have never envisioned herself saying this before, but she decides she wants to pursue a more stable career path. She decides that she can always do graphic design in her spare time, but that a steady paycheck sounds like the best. She made a change that would have scared her just months ago, but after a series of life events, she decided it was best and she pivoted her life for the better. Let's look at example number 2. Josh doesn't like to exercise. It has never been a big part of his life, and he gets bored as soon as he hops on the treadmill. There's a part of him that is nervous about exercising. It's intimidating to work out around other people who are experienced and comfortable with working out. For him, stability means sitting at home and watching his favorite TV show with his wife. The change? After a checkup with the doctor, Josh realizes he needs to adopt more active lifestyles. This wasn't in the cards for him just a few months ago, but his doctor's visit catalyzes a shift. He knows that he'll feel a little unstable or uncomfortable at first, but he also knows that it's best for him, and his mindset shifts accordingly. Example 3. Artie works at a grocery store, and he loves his job. He's friends with all of his coworkers, he gets discounts on food, and he was just recently named Employee of the Month. For him, it's stable and it's dependable. He has never thought about changing his job or moving to a new city because he knows there's no guarantee that he would like it. The change? One day, everything changes. He walks into work and he decides to do something else and experience a new environment. He doesn't know where he'll go or what he will do, but this change of mind is compelling enough to encourage him to do it quickly. Artie realizes that stability, although nice, is never a guarantee. He could lose his job tomorrow and would still be faced with uncertainties. He's now ready to take on a new environment and a new challenge. All of these examples are pretty different from each other. One of them may resonate with you, or maybe none of them do. The vital thing to note with each of these examples is that life is never a guarantee. Stability and uncertainty are nice to haves, but they're not a rite of passage. As humans, we have to embrace that change, and it's going to happen. And sometimes we need a catalyst to change. The next time you struggle with change, remind yourself that it is 100% normal. Remember that it's just your brain's way of keeping you alive so the species survives. In order to continue progressing and evolving, we need to be able to not only embrace change, but enact it. Now that you know what change really is, how change pertains to you, and why we as humans struggle with it, it's time to talk about the positives. Why is transformation necessary? What benefits does it have on your life? And how will it impact you in a positive way? We'll answer all of those questions and more. First up, why is change important? If you're listening to this with a what's in it for me attitude, you're not alone. We rarely associate change with positivity, but you probably do associate change with impact. Think about it logically. If things remain the same, there is no impact. Envision a diagram with a straight horizontal line. That is life without change. Sure, you may minimize the risks, but also minimize the successes. With that in mind, here are some reasons why change is important and impactful. Number 1, personal growth. Just like flowers need water to grow, you need change to grow. With change comes learning and personal growth opportunities that will challenge you as a person for the better. You'll be pushed out of your comfort zone in the best way possible. Confidence. Do you know that feeling you get when you overcome an obstacle and you are over the moon happy with yourself? That's a healthy dose of confidence that you will get when you pivot your life. You'll be able to look back on all the challenges you overcame and great things that you did, and you'll celebrate. That confidence is priceless. and it's inevitable with life pivots and transitions, especially when you tackle it all on your own. Number three is motivation. Motivation is contagious. It starts with one small win, and soon enough, you can't get enough of it. In the context of changes in life, motivation will come much easier to you because you will know what you're looking for. You'll have more aim, and you'll be much more excited about potential pivots in your life. It starts with a big one, and lucky for you, you're already halfway there. Number four is resilience. Resilience is a big deal, and for many, it's highly underrated. Being resilient means you won't back down or give up when life gets hard. And as you know, life isn't always easy. Being able to weather the storms that change brings, you'll naturally become stronger. Number five is excitement. We've talked about the harsh aspects of changes or pivots in life, but there's a whole world of confusion that exists in the realm of transitions. Making changes in your life is exhilarating. There are new people to meet, new places to go, healthy habits to develop, and things to learn about yourself. Number six, open the right doors and close the wrong ones. More often than not, you decide to make a change because something isn't going the way you want it to, right? In a way, you're trying to close the door that doesn't seem like the right one for you. When you embrace change, you commit yourself to closing all the wrong doors until you finally open the right one. We can't guarantee that it'll happen on the first try, but rest assured, you will definitely be able to move on in your life when you're committed to making changes. Number seven, it gives you a story. Have you ever been asked, what's your story? And I had a hard time answering it. That may be because you've hit a stopping point and you are no longer a fan of your story. Your story is uniquely yours, and it should be exciting, happy, and you. The decision to pivot your life is a chance to rewrite your story. You're in the driver's seat here, so when you get nervous about taking a chance and mixing things up, remember that you are a writer of your own story. Number eight, flexibility. Like an athlete who stretches every day, your mental bandwidth will stretch as you put yourself up to the challenge of tackling new changes. You'll become more adaptable because you will recognize that change is constant and life is fluid. We can't just hope that things will always be the same and that things will always be comfortable. Instead, we will learn how to be flexible when things take an unexpected turn, which will help you at work, in relationships, and on a personal level. Learn your strengths. In addition to becoming more confident, you will also learn a lot more about your strengths and weaknesses. Pivoting your life takes a tremendous amount of introspection. And in those periods of self-reflection and learning, you will realize your strengths on a whole new level. Number 10 is compassion. Anytime you get sucked into a routine, you become wrapped up in your own little bubble. You may forget what's going on in the world or what it's like going through a hardship. This lack of compassion often goes hand in hand with a mundane routine life. Making a change does the opposite. It gives you an appreciation for challenges and triumphs, and it reconnects you to the human experience, the good, the bad, and the ugly of it. In the long run, this compassion will help you and those around you. When is it time to change? If you've read all the wonderful benefits that come along with a significant life pivot, you may be antsy to implement a change or two in your life. On the flip side, you may be wondering how you know it's time to make a change. The big question is when. After all, it's not every day that we decide to change our lives around. Sometimes we need a push in the right direction. Chances are, if you're in a rut or you've hit a roadblock, you may have a hard time coming to terms with the fact that a pivot is in order. Maybe you feel like you're dragging your feet, or perhaps you're sad. Maybe you've been stressed out, or you are angry at the way your life is going. In any of these circumstances, you are not yourself. So it may be hard to recognize when it's time for a change. That's okay. We'll help you out. Read below for some telltale signs that it's time to make a change in your life. You're focused on the little things. If you find yourself wrapped up in the details and stressing out over the small things, you may need a shift of your mindset. Typically, this is a sign that you're either bored with your life or unhappy about something. Stress manifests in a lot of ways, and one of those ways is a focus on small things. The next time you find yourself stressing out about a dinner reservation or worrying about what you're going to wear to a party, stop and check in with yourself. This focus on the little things may actually be a sign that you need to make a change in your life. Jealousy is hitting hard. We're human, so jealousy is inevitable, especially in a social media driven world. We're bound to get jealous of other people's lives. But if you're at a point where you feel like you're comparing to every single person around you, it may be an indicator that you're simply unhappy with your life. It's a combination of the grass is greener on the other side, and it's time to make a change. And in order to make your grass a little greener than it currently is, you need to change up the way you fertilize it. You're living in the past. There are a few ways that you may be living in the past. Number one, if you're constantly reminiscing on the old times and wish you were back in that world, you're living in the past. If you look back with regrets, you're living in the past. For example, you might be looking back on a decision that you made that got you to where you are in your current life, and you regret it because you're not happy with the way your life is going. It's either of these scenarios. Living in the past is unhealthy. Today, it's what's in front of you, and today is all you know for sure. A life pivot may be in order if you realize you keep dwelling on yesterday. Your habits might be unhealthy. There are all kinds of unhealthy habits that we tend to adopt when we're not happy with our lives. Here are a few examples. Drinking regularly to forget your stress or life problems. Eating unhealthy food. Avoiding the gym. Isolating yourself away from your friends and family because you don't want to hear about their amazing lives compared to yours. Watching too much TV or escaping reality regularly. Stressing about the small things. Once you take a look at this list, think about all the context of your life. In the back of your mind, you probably know that you developed an unhealthy habit or two. But admitting that means admitting that you do not, or no, but admitting that means that you need to do something differently, which is a daunting thought. On the flip side, if you don't pivot away from some of these bad behaviors, they will progress. Soon enough, you'll be dealing with a much bigger problem. When you start to experience a combination of these things, it's time to figure out what needs to change. You experience Sunday scaries. First of all, if you're familiar with the term Sunday scaries, you may have experienced them once or twice. That's okay. But if you're getting nervous every Sunday about the week ahead of you, it's time for you to figure that out. Not every week is going to be perfect, but the majority of your weeks should be good ones. If they're not, why wouldn't you want to change them so that they get better? You're tired all the time. We're not supposed to be exhausted daily. Energy is something that we naturally produce. And if we're not producing it, there may be a deeper rooted problem, specifically one pertaining to your emotional and overall happiness. Pay attention to your own yawns. They may be letting you know you need to pivot your life for the better. Your life feels like a movie, but a boring one. There's a massive difference between a movie-like life and a dull movie script that your life follows a little too closely. If you feel like you're just following a script, reading off the lines lifelessly, and lacking plot twists, take some time to rethink how you're doing things. Do you really want your life to play out this way? Or do you want to start writing your own script? There's nothing like a good, healthy change of pace that will flip the script and keep you on your toes. You're on autopilot mode. Sometimes you're so used to a routine that you go through the motions without realizing it. Driving to the grocery store is a perfect example. You go the same route day in and day out, and when you get in the car and start driving, you don't take much time to notice the journey. You just get to the destination and call it a day, right? That's what I call autopilot mode. And for a grocery trip, it's okay. But your life, heck no. You should not be living your life on autopilot. As soon as you feel like you might be guilty of this, you need to put it to an end. In this case, your change can be small. You can make changes and so that you can make life exciting. It doesn't have to be that repetitious. Something as simple as noticing flowers when you walk by them or listening to the bustling city as you walk around it. Do whatever it takes to pay attention to life around you, and you'll notice an immediate and huge difference. You're not happy. This may seem simple, but you'd be surprised at how many people go through their lives feeling unhappy but doing nothing about it. If you're generally a miserable person, alarm bells should be sounding off in your head. You may not be able to pinpoint the source of your unhappiness, but logic tells you that whatever you're doing, it needs to change. You're indifferent. Indifference can actually be worse than unhappiness. If you ever heard the quote, hate is not the opposite of love, indifference is, you would understand why. See, if you are indifferent, you've already passed the stage of wanting to make a change. Indifference signals a phase of being okay with whatever is handed your way, even if it's undesirable. Talk to any motivational speaker or success hero, and you'll quickly realize that this attitude will get you absolutely nowhere. Sure, it may keep you on the same trajectory that you're on, but it won't push you towards success or great happiness. The good news is you don't have to be indifferent. Indifference isn't permanent. Indifference isn't permanent. It'll take some work and a whole lot of embracing change, but once you're able to, you'll make a huge difference in your life. So what will it be? Will you stay on the same path and always wonder if your life could be different? Or will you take the risk and make a change? It may seem like a big deal right now. It may even look like a big deal 6 months from now. But in reality, life moves regardless of your movement. It will continue to go. And if you don't take the time to keep up with it and change along with it, you will miss out in big ways. That's why we're urging you to pivot. That's why we're telling you that you are more than capable of changing your life. And that's why we're helping you along your journey. You know that you need to make a change. Whatever that change may be, the last step, it is the fun part, deciding how you will make that change. So let's talk about that. How to make a change. It would be unrealistic to assume that you know how to pivot your life. Like anything in life, it takes time to understand how to try something new. And that's why we're going to break it down for you. Making a change doesn't have to be a chaotic process. Although each person will approach it differently, you can certainly follow a step-by-step process to ensure that you aren't wasting time and you're pivoting in the right direction. First up, you're going to set an intention. This step is potentially the most important. Just like you set goals for work or fitness plans or a new year, you need to set goals for your transition in life. Going into a new life phase means a new set of intentions, and it's your job to line up to those intentions for yourself clearly. To make it a little easier to understand, here's a breakdown of vague goals versus clear, measurable intentions for your life's pivot. Vague, I'll start exercising more. Intentional, to live a healthier lifestyle, I will start working out at the gym 2 times a week and attending a yoga class at least once a week for 6 months. If things go well, I'll reassess my goals and increase the cadence at which I exercise. See the difference? Vague. I want to try out a different career path. Intentional. Because I'm not happy with my current path, I will start freelancing on the side to try out different career possibilities. I'll do this for at least 6 to 8 months to get a good idea of what I like and what I don't like. And then I'll check in with myself to see what I like the best. Vague. I want to make my marriage better. intentional. I haven't been putting enough effort towards my marriage, and I want to change that. I will promise my spouse that at least one date night every week. And when we have an argument, I will be more introspective and less defensive. Vague. I'd love to start going on more vacations. Intentional. I will reach out to my close friends to see who is down for a few vacations this year. Because I'd like to see the US more, I'll be sure to target the West Coast and South when I'm planning different trips. Let your intentions marinate. It's one thing to set goals and intentions for yourself, but it's another thing to really let them sink into your mind. After you set intentions for your new life, try meditating on them. That doesn't mean the classic yoga pose and the Om every once in a while. There are several ways to meditate on your goals. Here's just a few. Keep a journal. I recommend Pivot. Document your thoughts and your progress regularly. Your journal will be a safe space for your thoughts. Talk to your friends and family about your new life pivot. In other words, make it official. As soon as you tell other people and garner support from your loved ones, you'll be much more likely to really commit to your new intentions. Set aside more time for yourself. There's nothing like a good old day of TLC, especially when you're contemplating life change, whether it's small or significant. Change, like an attitude pivot, me time will be essential to your success. Document your intentions. This is different from keeping a journal because this is more like a promise to yourself. This is less of an investigation of your feelings and more a commitment, a written pledge, which is shown to make more of an impact on your overall success. It helps to pin your written promise somewhere visible, like a mirror, by the kitchen, or in your car. Think about your obstacles. Did you read that correctly? Absolutely. Contingency plans are essential because they prevent you from feeling let down if things don't go according to your hopes and wishes. You mustn't be unrealistic with this life pivot. So be sure to think about any potential obstacles when you're making plans and setting intentions. It's never fun to think about the negatives, but it's even less fun to deal with them when they're unexpected. Get ahead of the game and list out things that could potentially go wrong. You'll thank yourself for it in the long run. Decide what's realistic. Here's the bubble burst for all the dreamers out there. Sometimes we come up with dreams that aren't realistic, and as much as it hurts, we need to determine which dreams are feasible and which ones are far-fetched. When you're trying to change up life, you might start out with a lot of ideas swarming around in your mind. That's normal, and it's an excellent way to jumpstart the change it up mentality. But once you let your dreams run wild, you need to reel it back in with a dose of reality. To get you started, here are some questions you should mull over. Is it affordable? Oftentimes, our idea of significant change is a costly one. It might sound exciting at first, but when you crunch the numbers, you realize you're not financially prepared for this big of a life pivot. For example, if you decide you want to move across the country, but you don't have enough money for the move, you find yourself in a tough spot. In this case, you should push back the timeline so that you can make your big move, but after a period of saving money. Do I really want this? It seems simple enough, but when we get caught up in dreamland, we tend to forget to ask ourselves the simple but big questions. This is a classic case with drastic hairstyle changes. Hairstylists often find people sitting in the salon chair panic on their faces, asking the stylist if they really want a different hairstyle after already committing to it. This is one example of many, but the basic gist is that it's just as easy to get an idea in your mind that you really want something new or different. Yet, perhaps you haven't thought about the actual change as much as you thought about the idea of the change. What's my plan? This is actually a huge question that encompasses many others, but don't forget to acknowledge it is an important step in your process. You can't make a change without a plan. So once you've decided you really want the life pivot and that it's realistic for you, you need to start planning. Set a timeline. You're not about to tell, we're not about to tell you that change follows a linear path. It doesn't. It's messy, unpredictable, and oftentimes time consuming. But that doesn't mean that it isn't doable. Once you've decided you want to pivot your life, you'll want to make it stick by setting a timeline. This timeline should be leaning on the conservative side and should definitely be realistic. If you set a time frame of seeing the results from your change after 3 weeks, you're going to be discouraged when you don't see those results. Instead, set realistic expectations for yourself about the timing. You may consider not setting up a concrete end goal and instead just set up several timelines for mini goals. There's many different ways to time it out. The important thing is to make sure you're managing your time well and managing your expectations better. Keep an eye on your dream. We've talked about goals and those are important, but what you really need to focus on is the big picture. It's not often in life that you'll hear, so now is a great time to embrace it. The thing about pivoting your life is there is no formula for you to follow. There's also no timeline that you have to adhere to. This is 100% personal decision, and you don't have to do it a certain way because it's your own vision. Some people spend an entire lifetime pivoting their lives. It is a constant. With all of that said, it's also exciting. Changing your experience is one of the few things you will have control over in life. So when you start to get caught up in the nitty-gritty, try to zoom out and keep your eyes on the overall dream. Who do you want to be? What do you want your life to be like? How do you want to get there? Replace your old habits. Part of your change will be focused on pivoting towards what you do want, and part of your change will be about pivoting away from what you don't want. We're all guilty of forming bad habits through our lives, and when you're making changes in your lifestyle, it's a good time to start wilting down those bad habits. To make things easier, instead of trying to get rid of a bad habit, try swapping it for a better one. For example, if your habit is that you eat ice cream late at night, try swapping the ice cream for a bowl of cherries or berries. That way, you're not going cold turkey, but you're still ensuring that the bad habit is being phased out. Make sure to stick with it. This is the hardest of them all, and you probably know exactly why. How many times have you said you would start doing something, felt really committed, and then 6 weeks later, it completely stopped? Chances are you've probably done this pretty often. We've all been there. It's hard to keep up with that change, but this one is different. It's not just a change, it's a life pivot. You're not here because you want to change the way you exercise or start eating healthy. You're here because you don't like the way you're living your life and you're ready to shift so that you are happier with your life. Simple enough, right? Whenever you get the feeling that you want to give up, come back to your why. Ask yourself why you decided to make this change in the first place. Remember where you were a few months ago and why you weren't happy with that version of yourself. Come back to your list of things to change. It may be hiding, but it's in there for you, and it's in you. In conclusion, our advice on how to make a change was probably a lot easier than you thought it would be. Pivoting your life isn't difficult. People do it every single day. What's hard is when you're reluctant to make the change. The good news for you is you're already there. You know you want to transition in your life so that it's in a better place. You know what you need to do, and you've got a good idea on how to do it. You're one step ahead of the game. The next step is to get to work. Ready, set, pivot. Thanks for listening.